Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I apologize first off about the quality of the webcam camera. I just recently bought a new MacBook and you would think that naturally the new photo booth webcam would be of better quality than the last one that I had, but apparently not. So this discussion was inspired by a conversation that I had with a friend a couple of weeks ago when I made the offhand comment that I actually do not speak with my natural pitch of voice. When I say natural, I don't mean that my voice is incapable of doing it or that I am forcing my vocal cords to do something that is unhealthy, but rather I have trained my voice to come out a certain way that is not how I was accustomed to speak growing up. So as an introduction, I'm a transgender guy. I use he, him pronouns. My chosen name is Kaleb, and in real life I currently go by my initials, KC, so as to avoid being dead named. And one of the other things that helps me with my gender dysphoria and my voice dysphoria is to train my own voice to come out several pitches lower than the voice that I was born with, if that makes any sense. So to start off with a couple of definitions in order to clear the air. Gender dysphoria has been defined in the Diagnostical and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders by the American Psychiatric Association as, quote, the distress that may accompany the incongruence between one's experienced or expressed gender and one's assigned gender, end quote. And of course there are several debates live on the internet about whether or not gender dysphoria is a requirement in order to be able to identify as transgender or to be able to enter the transgender part of the LGBTQ plus community. I will not be addressing that today. And in the same vein, voice dysphoria has to do with when a transgender person does not feel that there is a direct connection between their gender identity and how their voice comes out, and how they perceive it, how they hear it, and how other people hear it, and gender them based on how their voice sounds. So to put it simply, in other words, voice dysphoria describes that phenomenon when a transgender person may be triggered to feel anxious or extremely uncomfortable when they hear their own voice, such as when they speak or when they hear a recording of it, and or when people respond socially through verbal or nonverbal cues gendering them as their assigned gender at birth instead of their expressed or experienced gender, the one that they wish to present as. So to break it down a little bit, I was assigned female at birth, and I identify as a trans male. I am pre-T, pre-transition, pre-testosterone, pre-HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy, because, as I will discuss in a later video, I am actually a closeted transgender guy. And so, damn, that's my friend in the back. Different transgender people have different kinds of experiences. For example, varying levels of dysphoria, varying sorts of triggers for the dysphoria. For example, in my personal experience, I get triggered by seeing my breasts, and so I often go to work and to school wearing something that's called a chest binder. In another video, I will be talking about my trans masculine clothing haul, things that I'm able to wear in order to feel less triggered and less dysphoric. So, for example, wearing skirts, dresses sometimes triggers me. Moving on from definitions and messy explanations of my personal experience, what I will talk about today is my voice dysphoria. Voice dysphoria is one of the worst aspects of dysphoria that I experience on a day-to-day basis. So for some context, let me show you all what I sound like with my natural voice. Hi, my name is Casey. This is my natural pitch when I don't try to lower my voice. And then back to how I'm projecting my voice now. It is not a considerable difference in pitch, but I think you can kind of hear a slight drop in the tone. I am aware that because I present very feminine, due to circumstances out of my control, that pitching down my voice will not prevent me from being misgendered. However, it still helps me to feel less dysphoric when I hear myself speaking and it doesn't sound femme or high-pitched. Now, a really funny story is that I started training my voice even before I hopped onto YouTube and realized that there was a whole community of helpful, supportive trans YouTubers who could talk about voice training and share their experiences and sort of like tutorials on how to do this. And here's the thing. Anybody can train their voice to go either up or down in pitch. So the reason why I was able to do this, even though I hadn't found out yet that I could follow along with tutorials online, was that I have had operatic voice training from a young age. So, story time. When I was 11 years old, my parents had me take voice lessons with a Russian opera singer.
Thanks, Asian mom and dad.
And one of the very, very first things that she trained me to do, even though my vocal cords, my lungs, my diaphragm were probably not the most well developed, that really helped me to translate some skills to vocal training. For example, there are different ranges of tone called head tone and chest tone, which describe how and where the air passes through your lungs and out your mouth in order to produce a high note or a long note. In simple terms, head tone tends to describe the treble part of the scale, whereas chest tone is what is used to produce the lower notes at a projected volume. And then of course you all have probably heard of whistle tone, which I will not reproduce for you here. That would be a complete disaster. Some more background about me. I am actually a soprano. I started out as a high soprano pre-puberty, and then after puberty, my higher register dropped down about 2 notes, but then my lower register expanded by about almost an octave, and so I could technically sing alto parts along with a few soprano parts. So how this worked was, I figured out that when I was speaking in my normal voice, such as this, when my pitch is a little higher, and you can kind of really hear how femme I sound, I was actually speaking in head tone. Basically, the air that passes through the lungs and is supported by the diaphragm and then goes through your airways and comes out your mouth. When you're trying to sing a higher note, you feel that it's kind of resonating or kind of echoing through the skull. It's a very approximated kind of explanation, and I will admit that I don't know the science behind it, but it's something that you kind of feel once you just get into it and try to sing a high note. Whereas when you're singing with chest tone, the air is you feel it kind of compressed in the chest area, and you can feel the reverberation behind your ribs when the air comes out, and then you produce the note. Now y'all are probably like, Kaleb, you're talking about singing and about where the air is moving from your mouth, but you're not actually showing us by singing and showing us how the air moves out of your mouth. Okay.
Well, my time has come.
And this is the perfect excuse to show off how I sing. Just kidding. I am super self-conscious, and you all should be really grateful that I'm actually putting this out there for you, because... So let's take a riff from Somewhere, which is a classic hit from the musical West Side Story, as an example of how you can move from chest tone to head tone. Hold my hand and we're halfway there. Hold my hand and I'll take you there. Somehow, someday, somewhere.
Stop it. Get some help.
I really didn't need to sing the whole thing. So as you could probably hear in the first part of the riff, when I started out by saying hold my hand, that was starting out in chest tone. And then when I got to the part where I said, hold my hand and I'll take you there, somehow, someday, somewhere, that was when the head tone really kicked in. But then somebody might ask, Kaleb, you're a soprano and you like to sing, and you have all this operatic voice training. How come you don't get triggered to have vocal dysphoria when you're singing? Okay. This is the first and the last time I will ever say in my life that I am grateful to be half deaf. So a sort of accident when I was younger, about 13, 14 years old, left me deaf in the right ear. And so I can hear nothing, completely nothing. I mean, some kinds of vibrations. I can only hear out of my left ear. And normally when I would record in the studio, or I have my headphone in order to listen to accompaniment while I sing something, I do not hear myself singing. I'm operating mostly on muscle memory. So the same thing happens when, for example, I have my headphones in and I am trying to speak to a person, such as you. You may think that I'm able to hear you or there's no music playing, but really there is music playing most likely. But really what's happening is that I'm utilizing my skill in reading lips to figure out what you're saying, and then I'm using my muscle memory in order to talk to you, to be able to form sounds without sounding weird, and then at the same time also kind of using muscle memory as well to remember to pitch down my voice. If I lay my hand right now on my chest, even if I I were to cover my working ear, I can definitely feel that I am pitching down my voice to around the correct level or the lowest level that I can because I feel the reverberations underneath my hand. Whereas if I were to pitch my voice back up to where it's normal, I don't feel any kind of reverberation at all underneath my hand. On the contrary, I feel it going in my skull, and yeah, I should really stop talking like this right now because I'm starting to get triggered. One final point which you all might find a little interesting is that my ability to train my voice and consistently pitch myself down varies depending on the language that I'm speaking. So I currently speak about 5 languages, Filipino being my native language, English my second and almost native language, Spanish having bilingual proficiency, Portuguese, and then a dialect of Filipino which is called Ilocano. I will not go into what I sound like in Portuguese or Ilocano, but let's just deal with the first 3. So Tagalog, which is the name for the Filipino language, being my native language, the one that I grew up with, heard the most around the house, and which I ended up speaking more later in my adult life, I am able to pitch down my voice to the maximum. For example, ang sasabihin ko ay ang pangalan ko ay Kaleb. At ganito ang tunog ng boses ko pag nagtatagalog ako. Now, there's probably not that much difference when I'm speaking in English, as you can see when I just switched, but I do wish that I could pitch myself down just a little bit more in English since I do interact with a lot of English speakers. And then the really funny thing is that even though I would consider myself pretty fluent in Spanish, it's still the one out of the 3 that I feel the least comfortable with. And so being very conscious first of grammatical things such as vocabulary, conjugations, accent, I tend to forget to pitch my voice down. So por ejemplo, este es el tono de mi voz cuando hablo en español y no creo que suena muy masculino. También porque cuando hablo español tiendo a usar entonaciones que suben. So yeah, that's basically what I sound like in Spanish, and that's the language that I'm working on to pitch my voice down anymore. By no means is this video meant to represent what voice dysphoria is like for everybody else. And on top of that, you do not need to have operatic voice training or even voice lessons or any knowledge whatsoever of music in order to be able to train your voice to pitch up or down if you're a transgender or non-gender conforming person with vocal dysphoria. But I hope that this video was in some way kind of educational, maybe a little funny.
Yeah, you think you're funny, Kaleb.
And if so, please don't be afraid to leave a comment, interact, talk a little bit about your experiences or what you might have learned or what was surprising to you in this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.